I'm going to be the adjudicator, it feels like, tonight, because I think the man that we've got to play with is going to be absolutely super fun. He's ridden just about everything, he's done just about everything, he knows just about everyone. So without further ado, can I introduce to you, please, for a big round of applause for James Whitham.
Good evening.
I'm not joking when I said he's been everywhere and done everything, because he really has. But as is sort of almost tradition here at the minute, we've just got a bit of music playing in the background there, Marky boy. Can we wind that back a bit, do you think? No, the music. Just buzz it back a bit. This is Mark, by the way, another one of our... Anybody know him? Anybody want to know him? I love working in a local environment. Where's Chris? Is he hiding from the abuse? Yes, he is. Chris Herring, let's start with the proprietor, shall we, a little bit here. I mean, you've known Chris for a lot of years as well. Generationally, you seem to have caught me up. You've got my hairstyle now.
Or lack of.
Lack of, indeed. Yep. Physically, very similar.
Do you want to say?
It's amazing.
You don't want a lot, well, I've got some.
We'll get to that in a little while, but we've known Chris for a long time, haven't we?
Yeah, I first got to know Chris when his dad and him were running a little bike club up in a place called Northallerton, North Yorkshire Road Race Supporters Club, and used to put, the minute you started getting a little bit famous up north, they'd have you up there doing talks and fundraising evenings, and it was a good club and people supported it because they put every single penny back into local riders. So, and for about 7 or 8 years, they bought, the way they did this was they buy local promising riders leathers, because what you do, you start scrimping, you want to spend your money on your bike and make it go quicker, but you forget to make yourself look the part, and there were a lot of decent up-and-coming riders just looked like they spent the time getting dragged around the track and tarmac on the leathers, so the club bought leathers and it was a good thing, so we all supported it.
Indeed. Let's talk about Mum and Dad and how things started from the beginning for you.
Pretty typical, I would have said. I'm from farming stock, so you need certain things to be into bikes, so you did them days. You needed a dad who was into them, generally, or an uncle or somebody. It probably doesn't happen as much now, but my dad was into bikes and encouraged me to get a bike, but we had room. We had brought up on a small holding. And when I was about 6, and this is what did it, and it's going to sound flipping cocky this, but it actually isn't. It was scruffier than you think. So my dad bought, if you can remember, tractors called David Brown tractors. They were white with orange chassis, if you remember them. They're quite famous. Well, we were living in Halifax on a small holding, and an airfield. My dad had got his pilot's licence, and he flew little aeroplanes. And an airfield came to sell in Huddersfield, and it belonged to the David Brown Corporation that were built in a place called Meltham near Huddersfield. So from the age of nearly 6, or 5 3/4 onwards, I was brought up with a ton of space, sheds and mechanical things knocking about. So you just, I mean, when you're a lad and you've got space and things with engines, it's a godsend. That's what got me going with bikes. Plus, my dad was into bikes. He never raced himself, but he took me to the Isle of Man in 78, 79. He took me to, you would be racing on some of what I went just, I think. You'd be a young, I remember Keith, there's a big story in MCN, I used to get MCN every week. There's a big story about Keith being this up-and-coming world champ. You're riding a 350, maybe an E or a G Yamaha.
An E, you were right, that's not bad.
And you were, I think, probably 18 or 19 young, and a big ton of blonde hair, and you were going to be the next kid. I think you'd had maybe top 10 in the Grand Prix somewhere. But anyway, that was the upbringing I had. But when you look, now you look at your parents and you think that's really why, you don't think so at the time, but your parents are why you end up the way you are to a great degree, which is a real worry these days. Innit? You know what I mean? Because kids don't want to do what we did, and parents aren't allowed to be the parents that they were then, if that makes any sense. I know we were brought up on this small, this airfield, so it's farm then an airfield, but we farmed as well. But my dad was into flying, and he was such a cock with it. He only flew little airplanes, like little 2-seat Cessnas and Robins, and just no more expensive than a decent family car, right? So he'd make it sound like it was something special, and he'd get his wallet out and there'd be a picture of an airplane. He'd, I mean, that's my airplane. Fuck off, Dad. Right? Well, and some of the things that happened up there you can't believe, because he was also the tightest Yorkshireman, and that's saying something. They are tight. A Yorkshireman is a Scottish person with the generosity beaten out of them. Right? And a couple of the stories. The first one I remember, his mate was a really wealthy bloke who had a helicopter. So my dad's second wife, Pam, within a year of getting married, she died of a brain tumour. It was all very sad, and my dad was devastated. But she knew she was dying, and she's given him instructions as to where to empty the ashes, and it's a field above Halifax where she used to go as a kid with her parents, blah blah blah. You can imagine the story. So instead of going up on his own in the car and having a solemn ceremony on his own between him and his wife, who's just died, he gets his mate with a massive flash helicopter, and what he'll do, yes, you're guessing, we'll fly over this field and we'll tip her out of the helicopter, right? Well, first we had to take the doors off this thing and put them in, leave them at our place. And I'm in the back with this pot, and my dad's in the front with the guy called Ron, who's airplane, who's helicopter is, and he's hovering over this field, and it's all a bit blustery and you know, a bit unstable. And he leans round to me, I pass him the pot, he takes the top off. Well, you would expect things tipped out of an helicopter will go straight down, right? Gravity and the wash from, oh no, that's not what happens. The air coming out of them rotors was going round in a big circle, and she came back in. Fucking Ron wasn't happy. He's going, bloody hell, David. We had to vac her up when we got back. But the flying thing was a good thing, and my dad was also one of them blokes that had a healthy disrespect for any safety concerns. I'm glad he's dead now, because he wouldn't have coped. Well, he'd have been 100 now, so he would have been dead anyway. But he wouldn't have coped well with modern life, and the health and safety thing would have crippled him. Everything he did had a big element of danger, which I appreciated as a kid.
So, what traits would you say that you inherited from your dad?
A little bit of that. You know, if you can't look at something, right, and think, well, that might hurt, you're knackered, aren't you? People need their own risk assessment, not somebody coming in, they're paying, you know, 500 quid an hour for a risk assessment. You know what's going to hurt you, or you should, and you have your own little risk assessment.
I mean, where do we go from here then? I mean, it's a situation where, obviously, from a televisual point of view, you're working your way. It will come to an end at some stage, like it did for me. You're perfectly happy in your life. Let's roll back then to motorbikes right at the very beginning. I mean, Rally Wisp, really? Yeah, well, like I said, if it had an engine and wheels, whether it were four wheels, go-karts, we had the sort of room to express ourselves with whatever. So what happened was, because we had a bit of space, we got kids from, the airfield was about 1.5 miles from any other houses, but there was a sort of council estate, a big housing estate, between my school and the airfield. So any youths who were into motorbikes, go-karts, wanted some welding doing, we had a welding plant up there, my dad was fairly handy with his hands. So anything that needed fixing, A, they knew my dad could probably do it, and B, he'd want to do it. Whereas their dads wouldn't want them on a motorbike. Some of them hid them. Some of them hid them at my place. So you get a local kid who'd save up his paper round money and buy an GPO Bantam or whatever it was, under 90, and they won't want to keep it at home because the dad and the mum won't let them have a bike, so they keep it at our place. It was like a flipping scramble meeting every Saturday and Sunday, and my dad encouraged that. So yeah, I started with a Rally Wisp only because it got thrown in a skip and my dad pulled it out. For free?
Yeah, and it ran and you could, it was all right.
By the way, David Brown, I mean, for those of you in the know here will remember that David Brown, he didn't just make tractors, he made BMWs, Aston Martin. He was Aston Martin.
That's why Aston Martin's a DB, David Brown, if you didn't know. Yeah, so when they were struggling and they were going to get sold up and they were going to disappear, he was making fortune. He was a very profitable company with David Brown Tractors, and he bought, because he'd had a Aston Martin, he bought Aston Martin, and then that's why they were designation, and still is, DB whatever.
So do you keep in touch with some of these mates that you used to be blatting around the airfield with?
Yeah, some of them, yeah.
Because we were holding this conversation a bit earlier on. You know, Carl Fogarty's a mate of ours, different generations, of course. He fits in the middle a little bit, but you know, Carl is possibly struggling a bit with life at the moment, with one way and another. It's you know, superstardom has sort of got to him. It's never really got to you, though, has it? You've done very well.
I wasn't as good as him. I was planning. At one stage, I thought I might become world champion. I was planning on being a right twat. Because you can get away with it when you're world champion.
I'll manage that without being a world champion.
but I never became world champion.
So what about you? You've had quite a lot of trauma in your life, one way and another.
I started off with fuck all, and I've got most of it left. yeah. What are the health traumas?
Health, wife, life. And onwards. I mean, where do you want to go with it?
The health thing.
Well, it's a fairly major thing, James. I mean,
I
remember the first. You know, you've ridden 125s right the way through the superbikes. You know, at one time, you should have been a multiple British champion.
All right, thank you. I don't know who you were watching. Hey, get this right. So, the first time, a big thing, and Keith will remember this. At some stage, when you start getting better at racing your bike, you get on telly, right? And it's a thing. You go home and at the beginning of VHS, I've got everybody recording because I'm going to have a good weekend, and my race has gone on telly. I'm racing a production bike at a place called Carnaby near Bridlington, old airfield circuit, and I flipping won, and I knew it were on telly. I knew it were going to be televised. So, and not only that, BBC, and not only that, Murray Walker commentating. It's like the gold standard of TV. BBC and Murray Walker, don't get any better. And I've won. I'm going home. Can't wait to get home so I could watch this back, right? Murray Walker says, yes, there he goes. And I'm out front, so he had to say something about me, but there wasn't a lot going on. And he said, there he goes, James Whitham, yes, tall, blonde-haired, very confident man. And I'm thinking, I'm short, I've got brown hair, and I was shitting myself. And it turns out, when I spoke to him a couple of meetings later, because he did his homework, did Murray, he'd come and sit in your caravan, wouldn't he? Yeah. And get to know you a little bit. And he got me confused with a bloke called Mick Lofthouse, who was from Oldham, who genuinely was a good-looking, blonde-haired, confident man. He says, oh yeah, I got you mixed up with your Lofthouse. Thank you.
But when you look back at some of the commentaries back in the day, I mean, it was a job in commentary, even for the likes of Murray, who loved motorbike racing more than he did cars. But it was still a job that you would only be dumped on every now and again. Doing the research for a full-on series was quite tricky in those days because you'd only land on it now and again.
Yes. So what they'd do, they'd have chosen designated TV meetings. So they didn't follow a full championship. So it wasn't like doing a BSB season now, or with JT and Greg doing World Superbike, where you get to know it and you don't need any research once you get into it. But you have to commentate. If he did a British Championship meeting, then he'd commentate on perhaps 6 races, and probably only 3 or 4 of the people in all of them he actually knew anything about, because they were reasonably famous. The rest of them, he had to do his homework, so he was going to get it wrong. Plus the fact he was good when Murray got it wrong. I'd rather him think I was John Lofthouse, to be honest.
But then we had Chris Carter. We were talking about Chris Carter earlier on.
Brilliant.
Anybody remember Chris Carter from Derby that used to commentate on?
You'd remember his voice if you watch bikes. Brilliant commentator. So lifestyle choices, odd, but commentator.
We shouldn't really go there,
no.
really, should we? No. It's another politically correct box that we won't be ticking right now.
Yeah.
What about the first time that somebody commentated on you? When was your first memories of when people started to pick up on James Whitham and writing about you as well? Because Motorcycle News was Kettering here, so you'd have been. Did you actually join us at the 3 Cocks? You'd have been the 4th cock.
No, I missed that one.
It was a pub just up the road here in Kettering, where Motorcycle News. They were based in Dryden Street, I think it was, wasn't it? In the middle of Kettering. I'm looking at Chris here. Although you might not have been, you'd have been too young for that. I believe it probably would have gone to Peterborough by then. Yeah, but anyway, it was over here, and everybody used to go to the Three Cocks. You'd get Kenny Roberts in there at the weekend, and various other superstars.
Obviously not famous enough. No.
Too young, more like. So when you first became a star, I mean,
I think
how did that sit with you?
That's what you want, isn't it? You go racing your motorbike, you want to win some. Well, it's different now. People are brought up from, especially lads, especially boys, are brought up by the dads, particularly, and everybody else around them as they get going, to believe that they are the best at anything, or your best racer, you're going to be world champ, and thousands of kids are taught this. Virtually every young lad who gets into BSB has been told relentlessly from their original mini bike racing days that they are going to be world champ, they're going to be better than Valentino Rossi, that's where we're going, and they start believing it. I started racing because a good friend of my dad, a bloke called Clifford Leach, his lad was 4 years older than me. He's called Dave Leach. He ended up winning a couple of TTs. Good roadsman with Dave. And so I went to watch him, thought it was cool. My dad bought me a 125 Honda when I was 16. And really I started racing because I thought it was a cool place to be. Didn't think I was ever going to be any good. And actually, all bike racers seem to have good looking girlfriends.
You did?
I thought, yeah, because I raced bikes. and it worked. You can't believe it worked.
And then you married her.
Yeah, that didn't go so well. No, I did. It went. I mean, you know my ex. It went well for a long time. We're still good friends.
So at what point? I mean, you must have been, I think, on the crux of the changes from the sport when it went from
good to bad,
feet on the ground, to where we are now, to where it became mega professional and quite difficult to deal with.
I think I look back at my whole career and think that I probably, for me and for my character and my ability, I think I hit it absolutely spot on. I couldn't have got it any better. There's a lot of reasons why I probably wouldn't have made it to where I eventually did make it to, if the environment had been the same as it is now. My dad wouldn't have been putting 100 grand a year into it. Where he could probably afford to put, I don't know, 5 or 6 back then, probably 20 now, it would translate to. But
the money was good back then. The earnings were good.
But I think you got a really good time for motorbike racing. That late 70s, early 80s were just a boom time. They were selling 270,000 motorbikes for the road, or 300,000, wherever it was a horrendously big number. Everybody had money to spend.
Well, we were talking about it earlier on. I mean, at one point, it was a situation where my first start money was 25 quid at Mallory Park. We talked about it earlier. And by the end of that year, it was 3 grand in 1979.
Yeah, when a really nice house was probably 25 grand. So I remember winning in 1987. I won 6,000, and it didn't happen every weekend. I had a good meeting, and I won 6,600 quid in cash at Brands Hatch. 18 months later, I bought my first house for 25. So I won in one day a quarter of the price, the going rate of a little semi-detached house in Huddersfield, which is now 220 maybe. It's not, it's not unbelievable high prices, but it's still, that would be like winning 40 grand, and in one day. And they don't win anything at BSB now, nothing. There's no prize money whatsoever. So I think I probably had a good time.
We were in here with Alex and Sam Lowes and Leon Haslam the other day, who had some of his academy kids here as well. I won't say you feel sorry for them, but are you concerned with the way things are now for youngsters coming through?
Completely. And what I mentioned before, this mindset, and I don't know if it's come from America or it's because everybody knows about everybody and what they're doing through social media and the internet and all. Kids don't seem to start racing for the same reasons, and for me, not the right reasons as what we ever used to do. You wanted to race your motorbike because it was a really good thing to do. It was cool, a little bit dangerous, scared your girlfriend's parents, which you always liked. And now kids start racing genuinely because they just hell bent. It's like the X Factor, Remember that X Factor thing? A kid would stand up, oh no, I'm going to be famous. It's a matter of time before I make me be brave. They start singing, they're shit. But nobody's ever said, you're shit. What you need is a different career. It's not for you, the singing son. Right, well, there's ever so many people like that in bike racing. And tell you what happens. So what happens there is you're creating a system, or you're creating a scenario where absolutely by default, one person is going to get to the pinnacle of the sport, and that's the guy who wins the MotoGP championship, right? And it might be the same person for 3 or 4 years. So you've got these thousands of kids all around the world, and they want to be there, because you ask them, I'm going to be MotoGP world champ. Well, actually, you're not. So what you do then is, what you've done is you've created a whole raft, a whole flipping sea of kids who are going to be disappointed, because they're never going to be, right? They're just not. And that means there's no resilience to them whatsoever. They're not driven to it and keep going. Some do, some are good kids. But I had this kid, he's called Louis Vallely, right? And he's a good kid, good rider. He's in the junior superstock, which is 600cc production-based bikes at BSB. Yeah, and last year he had a really good first meeting, right? And he won. Second one, he fell off. Third one, he finished second, and his season's going all right. He's leading the championship. Then he fell off a cliff. He had a couple of bad rides. He's got his confidence knocked. He's fallen down. Somebody else knocked him off. His bike blew up, and that happens in racing. It happens in loads of sports, right? His sponsor, as an old sponsor of the team when I was with Rob Mack's Fast Orange team, you came to see him at Alton, and all they did was go around the paddock to commentate on, to see a few of the front-running kids. Would you speak to him? He's having a hard time mentally. Oh, wow, what's happened? I'm thinking, his mum's died, his dog's died, he's been given bad health news himself, something, proper serious. Well, his season's not going according to plan. I said, well, you don't want me speaking to him, son. I will tell you, you need some, I'm not your man. Oh, why? I said, because I'd slap him. And that's where we are with it. There is some good kids. I tell you who are tough when he comes through. Jake Dixon. Yeah. Tough kid. And you can see why he is as driven as he is. But you just look at some kids, even with a bit of talent, and even with a bit of speed, you're thinking, there's no chance.
You had Mick Grant. I mean, Mick Grant brought you on. When I first met you, you were like 16 just about, and Mick was behind you, and you don't get much more Yorkshire than Mick.
Oh, tough bloke, mate. Tough bloke. And he said, best thing about Mick was, he said it exactly, it was totally opposite of that, telling you, he didn't blow smoke around your bum, right? He just said it how it was. If you had a bad day, he'd tell you why. And if it were your fault, he'd tell you it was. And I loved having Mick with me, because it was just a very grounding thing. Just when you're starting to think you might have a bit of talent, Mick could inform you that probably you didn't. It's
funny how things go around. They talk about 6 degrees of separation between some of us, but I think when it comes to racing, we're all a bit closer than that. Mick Grant also brought over Christopher Mullen and
he could spot him.
Glenn Richards as well.
Ian Simpson, he dragged Ian Simpson from club racing. Loads of people. Mick could spot somebody with a little bit of talent, I think. Yeah.
And it's strange how things surface after the years as well, because OMG MotoGP, who we're recording for tonight, I mean, Renita Van Mullen, Chris's sister, is now working with us as well. She's now a presenter on OMG MotoGP. It's a family affair. And
Chris Mullen, just because you need resilience and you need to be a bit tough in a sport that will hurt you at some point, that's a fact. That doesn't mean you can't be a nice bloke. And I think some people make the mistake of thinking that is the case. Foggy did. Foggy had to hate people. He had to make himself a certain way to be as good as what he was, and that's fine. But that's not to say that somebody is a nice bloke can't be as good as somebody. Foggy said, nice guys don't win. Disagree.
When he sat here, one of the things he said to me after when we left was, I wasn't sure that they were going to like me. I mean, with respect to everybody in here, this is a very small venue, it's very personal, and everybody's very, very close up. And Carl was concerned that our audience at that evening weren't going to like him, which I never thought I'd ever hear Carl Fogarty say something like that in my life.
Carl always said that he won't bother about anybody liking him. He had a job to do, and that's what he did. Carl he had to be a certain way. The weird thing is, Carl had to hate the people who he saw pre-season as his closest rival. So at various points it was Scott Russell. He hated Scott, and Scott's a nice bloke. Yeah. Daft, stupid, funny American. He hated Aaron Slight, because one year Aaron Slight was going to be his closest rival.
We all didn't like Aaron.
He was a whinger, but he was tough, A flipping tough, strong lad. I remember him, he just flattened flipping Anthony Gobert. Honestly. Anthony Gold's getting him some flipping yap.
Hang on a minute. How comes he didn't win when it was the handbags with Hodgson then? Suzuka, was it? When those two were nose to nose.
Fight, would it?
No, exactly.
And his
exactly
head
my point.
He just lost the championship. I don't know. I'm just like that. He lost his head. I think that was his best chance at a championship. I was in that race, and even on the wind down lap, he's kicking out. Oh, Georgie's like, whoa! Got my own race, but Carl had to make himself hate certain people. He really hated John Kadinsky. However, we had a 25 years of Superbike reunion some years ago, obviously 25 years after, so wherever it was, or anyway, wait maybe, anyway. And yeah, well 25 years or 30 years, it was some big reunion. We all went to Italy and they were all there, and you have never seen, from hating somebody, it was just big bromance with them all. Carl loved them all, and they loved him, and he thought, it's weird when you've got to make someday. I quite like people I race with. I was going to say,
where do you fit in on this? Because everybody likes James Whitham. We all certainly do, as a broadcaster, because you do say how it is, or as far as you can go with that. But as a racer, I mean, what was your social circle? Who was your social circle?
Paddock's a weird place, especially when you get to a national championship paddock or above, because you have got a job to do. I tried to be friendly with everybody. I tried to really get on with teammates, and had some awkward ones, I think, but some really good oones as well.
Name them.
Awkward ones, Carl, but only because he was so driven and self-centered. His way of going racing was him, and so that it was hard work to be around in the paddock because you didn't exist. Really good ones would be Rob Mack, loved being Rob Mack's teammate. Neil McKenzie, still one of my best mates. Paolo Cazzoli, Mario Meregali, both brilliant people. So I had some really weird ones. I had a guy when I was racing Kenny Roberts' KR3. Remember the 3-cylinder 500, the machine of death. It was such a flipping weapon with that. I still, if somebody shows me a picture of it, I get that waft of surgical spirit, because that's normally what happened. Well, my teammate when I rode that was a guy called, well, one of them were French, the ex-motocrosser, Jean-Michel Bale.
Oh.
But he tended not to turn up a lot. He didn't like the bike. But who did turn up was an American called Mike Hale, right? Texan, the best looking man in the world, and even I knew it. Even I could tell. He looked like, the young Elvis? Young Elvis. We could be walking through, we're going testing in Suzuka or wherever, walking through an airport, and there's women just going, dunk, and running, walking into flipping posts and stuff. And we'd go into a hire car place to get the hire car in Australia, wherever it was, and he'd get chatted up by the woman behind the counter. Just unreal. I remember saying, I've got 3 sisters, and they all were really good, and still I got friends with my ex. And I said to them, we're out for a meal, and I said, is he that good looking? And every one of them went, oh yeah. Yeah, but he couldn't ride a bike very well, which made it all right.
Good for you.
Yeah.
What God giveth with one hand, he taketh with the other, eh, James?
Yeah.
Do you find yourself giving advice? I mean, it's a situation now. You're in that zone, aren't you? Really, you've gone through just about every class there is in Great Britain. Yeah. You've been World Championship racing. There are always people, kids, sponsors, and the like asking advice. And you'll have been through it all, and still will be going through it. I think you've got to be a little bit careful in terms of technical things, because I still ride modern road bikes. I still do my track days. I still get on track. I can still pedal a motorbike around reasonably well, but I wouldn't say I'd be the man who could set a bike up and help somebody in that sort of infinite technical things, because it's changed a lot. It's a lot more electronics now. But I think you'd still be reasonably well placed to give somebody advice on how to navigate a career through, where they should be riding, what class they should be aiming for. And you do get asked a lot, and I do if they're asked. Do you ever feel like getting out on a modern day bike? I mean, a Grand Prix bike, it's one of those. I always remember, again, we talk about Neil Hodgson quite a lot because he's still current. But when he got to ride the Ducati, Desmond Sadici,
bonkers.
It was, and he was like so far. I think actually even he thought he may be on the pace when he got on it. And of course he was so far away from it, you could almost see a tear in his eye.
Yeah, and I think you've got to, what you do is you pack in racing and you pass the baton on and you move on, and that's all you can do in it. And I think that bikes now, they've got more grip, more electronics, better chassis, they know what works, more power, and actually you can, one of the problems is a bike has to be set up, I know this was always the case, a fast rider will need a completely different setting to a slow rider. People think, and on my track days, they still think that if you wheeled Banyaya's bike in a pit lane, they would somehow magically go quicker than they just have on their stock R6 Yamaha. And they would go a lot slower and they'd probably crash it. Reason is, Banyaya can make it work. He's got grip, he keeps the tyres warm, he's cornering unbelievably quick, so he needs really hard suspension because otherwise it'd be like a big bath at the pace he's going. And he can use electronics. Well, you can't do that. And I couldn't, and you couldn't, and you couldn't probably 3 years after you packed in. So I think you've got to be a little bit careful. And I knew Odgie wouldn't go so quick because I've got invited. I went out to Portimao maybe 10 years ago to ride I rode 5 World Championship front running superbikes, and they were all awful. Really, if I'd have had a day and softened them up and got things that I could work with, I could have gone as quick as I could have gone on them, but I couldn't ride them the way they set up. Haga was terrible, and I've raced with Haga. His bike, high at the back, low at the front, and firm. You couldn't ride it. It felt like just felt awful. But that's how he rode. But yeah, I'm not stupid enough to think that I wouldn't want to do it.
So where are we in World Championships at the moment with World Superbike, MotoGP? From your perspective, what's gone wrong?
There's quite a lot gone right, and I think there's a lot going wrong at the minute. I think if you want my opinion, I would say MotoGP they've got to address some serious fundamental issues, I think. One of them is get rid of all that shit, right? And when I say shit, I mean aerodynamics, sitting down out of corners, ride height devices, launch devices, because it's all right. If you look at a set of rules at the beginning of a year and go, we could put a wing on and have an advantage within the rules. You do it and you get an advantage. But then, if there's an advantage, everybody gets it. So once everybody has all these things, there's no advantage, and it just makes everything more complicated and expensive. So get rid of all that stuff and let's get back to basics. And if you look, because everybody can do exactly what those bikes will do, it's getting like F1 where you put that shit driver in that good car and suddenly it's a good driver. And it's a little bit like that. It's never going to be exactly the same in bikes because there is the rider is more of a part of the overall package than a driver in a car is, in my opinion. But they need to, because what will happen is they get faster bikes, more grip, they'll corner better, they'll stop better, they get from one corner to another really quick. So then, you can't go to that circuit because we've worked out on this algorithm that there didn't enough runoff, so we'll go to that circuit. And that's fine at MotoGP because they can keep cherry picking circuits and there's lots to go at. And there'll be new circuits they can go to that are designed for that. In BSB, for example, we can't stop going to Cadwell and Knockhill and Alton because what you're going to have a two-round championship. So the BSB is going to have to do something. MotoGP really needs to do something. I think they're going to end up cutting power in 27, I think, because the speed they get from one corner to another is unreal. And once you're doing 220 mile an hour, there's horrendous risk wherever you are. So, and actually, when you look at MotoGP, there's been at least 2 occasions. One was a Moto2 where somebody went over a brow of an hill, crashed, and everybody missed him and hit his bike, and it was a big mess. And one where I think it was turn 2 maybe at Austria, where a bike came tippling through the middle and just missed Rossi and just missed the bike in front. That's a dead person if it had been a millisecond either way. So I think they've been a little bit lucky. So I think they're going to have to do something. I think BSB are really going to have to do something because I race a 200 horsepower or ride a 200 horsepower stock R1 around Cadwell, and that is no fun anymore. It used to be brilliant 150 horsepower. You could enjoy it, you could relax on straights a little bit, you could get yourself gathered up for your braking point coming up and all the rest of it. Now, trying to keep the thing on the ground, it's frightening. So they're going to have to do something, I think.
What was your favourite era
To watch or to get involved in?
to get involved in?
The racing I enjoyed most was my last 3 years of racing. I was on a Belgada Yamaha R6 in World Supersport, and I didn't win every weekend by all means. I finished 4th in a championship. I really think I didn't win a world championship because I didn't quite have the talent, but I had the best bike on the grid, and that's all you can ask for. And the team were just brilliant people. They were all Italian team, and they'd have done anything for me, and I quite like that.
You said you didn't really have the talent. I mean, do you think you're being a bit self-effacing with that one, or was there more to it behind the scenes? Could you have done more?
I think before my Belgada 3 years on the 600, I always thought, do you know what? I beat Foggy in some BSB races in the past. Why not? Why I hadn't got his bike, but actually over the years I did end up with a good bike. And in '94 I ended up with a factory Ducati. Carl had a factory Ducati. He won a championship, his first championship. I didn't. I finished 7th. I won a couple of rounds. No, won one round, 3 or 4 rostrums. So that learnt me a little bit.
Did you have anybody that was management-wise that was behind you? I can't imagine you having a manager or somebody that stands behind you.
I didn't want to pay anybody.
Well,
no, I didn't. I still think looking back, I think I definitely had the chances, and so it was down to me. I can't say that there were any reason I shouldn't have been world champion if I did have the talent. And certainly them 3 years on the Belgada 600, I had everything I needed, and I didn't win it. So, but how other can you look at it?
Did you look at it? Were you lacking in physique, for instance? Was there anything you didn't do training-wise? Compared with now, I mean, they're obviously all absolute athletes nowadays.
I think that's it's quite a misconception now, and it was very easy to look at your era and the Mick Grant era and before, when I was young and doing well at racing, and think that it were easy somehow then, and it was just easier. And they were all fat and they all got pissed up every night. And
we did.
Absolutely. Nah, you didn't.
We did.
You didn't though. You didn't, Keith. It was always a lot more. I don't think there's ever been an era where it was easy to win a world championship. Why would it be? And I think I've heard people say, yeah, but in your day, this and this. I'm thinking, mate, not only did I work hard and I trained hard, I just didn't shout about it. I wasn't on TikTok going, no, I've just beat my personal best. I didn't give a fuck about my personal best. My personal best would come Sunday at Monza or wherever it was. And I never once finished a race and thought, oh, do you know what, if I'd have been a bit fitter. Never, not once, not once. And you can't tell kids that now because they have got this overriding belief that somehow they've got it harder and they have to be fitter.
I wish you'd come round and sit at my dinner table. My kids could watch this.
And I'll tell you something. I'll tell you what people did do a lot. But we raced in World Superbike. We raced at Monza, Hockenheim, Imola, Brands Hatch, a World Championship race. And you knew if you fell all that back end of Brands Hatch, you fall down there. If you're on the pace at a World Championship race, you are getting it.
We're going to take a break in a minute, but let's throw it open to anybody out here.
What on my soapbox again there?
Yeah.
Ranting away he was.
You were growing in stature at every other word.
You know I'm going to get beat up on my way home, don't you?
Anybody out there that's got a question for James at this particular point in it? You, sir, yes?
Tell a story about, I came and saw you a few years back with Foggy, and you told a story about your uncle dying.
Hang on a minute.
Oh, man.
About transportation
Honestly,
of Uncle dying.
He sort of brushed it off. I didn't want to. Right, so seeing as you've asked. So basically, my dad again, right? My dad had 3 brothers. One of them was called Jim. Well, Jim was my dad's oldest brother, so my oldest uncle. And he was the one in the family that didn't go into farming or milk rounds or trade. He was a college lecturer. Brilliant, very organised man. So anything that happened in the family, he's the one that traced our family tree, and he's the one that, it was just the font of knowledge and sensibility in the family. So they had an uncle, my great uncle. So my dad's dad, my granddad's brother, we called Ralph, Uncle Ralph, and it was a bit of a pest. He'd come and stop with you, and you couldn't get rid of him. He'd been 35 years in the Navy, all through the Second World War and everything. He'd had a life. was strange. Anyway, he lived in Halifax in a little terraced house. So that's Halifax. He started going out with a woman, an older lady. She'd been in her 70s, he was sort of 80 odd at the time. From Oldham, she's got a little terraced house. Imagine, you won't know Oldham, but imagine Coronation Street, cobble street, brick houses, little garden, washing lines, right? That's what kids playing in streets, women talking over fences, you know. Right, so basically, he's gone over there and slept with his girlfriend and he's died in the night. Right, he's had a big heart attack and he's dead. She can't wake him in the morning, she panics, she doesn't even have a phone in the house. Right, obviously way before, I'd be about 10, this would be 70s, late 70s. So, she's in bits. He's give her a piece of paper, anything happens to us or anything needs doing, ring my nephew Jim. Rings Uncle Jim. Uncle Ralph's died, oh terrible, right, okay, well let's... So, Jim goes over there, doctor's already around there, doctor says, big heart attack, there's nothing, don't need a post-mortem, he's 80-year-old, there's your death certificate, can I leave you to make the arrangements? Yes, you can, yeah. So, goes out the house, up to the telephone box, rings a Halifax undertaker, which is about 20 mile away, 25 maybe. Yeah, me uncle's died, he's at Oldham, but we want you to do the job, he's Halifax man. Right, okay, we'll do that, yeah. But it'll be 150 quid extra charge because he's out of area. Or you can ring an Oldham or Manchester undertaker and they can hand him on to us and do the paperwork that way. Right, okay, I'll get back to you. Next 10p in the slot is ringing me dad, and I'm just at home helping my dad doing something. Phone rings, goes in house, Uncle Jim, yeah, all right, what's the address? Yeah, gives half an hour. Says to me, get in car. I didn't know what it was about. We drove over and into this street in Oldham, pulls up behind what I knew was my uncle's Austin Princess, Van den Pla. The posh one. So my dad gets out and says, right, just wait there, lad. And he walks up the street and into an house. There's people in the street. There's kids playing. There's just it's a busy street. Goes in the house. Less than 10 minutes later, maybe 6 or 7 minutes later, my dad reappears backwards, carrying some feet with a blanket over what was clearly a dead body. And then after he's out, Uncle Jim's got the hands and they come, bear in mind, I don't know whether I'm not a doctor, but I don't know when rigor mortis is supposed to set in, but he wasn't stiff because his arse was dragging on the cobbles, right? So they come down and how funny is this, right? I'm thinking, it's a dead man. And I'm panicking. And there's people stepping out of the way as they come down the pavement. So they get into the back of the Princess and it's way before the days of, you know, so Jim had to put his head down, right? Because he had to get his key out of his pocket, open the boot. And I would have said lifted, but it would be half folded. They'd get one end in, then the legs went in last, then they shut. And my dad got back in the car and he didn't say, oh, and he didn't say anything. We followed the Princess all the way back to this original undertaker that he'd rung by then some 2 or 3 hours earlier. We're all troops in there. Ralph's still in the boot. Goes in there. Jim says, yeah, I rung you about 3 hours ago. But Ralph, you know me. He says, yes, I took the call. And then undertakers are weird. They've got that, oh yes, it's a terrible business. You know, they've got that sympathetic kind of way with them because they've had to have. And Jim said, yeah, never mind about that. He says, you said it was going to be 120 quid or 150 quid to bring him from Oldham. Yes, that's right. He says, well, we've got him outside at boot. and look, then the mask of sympathy, he says, you can't do that. He says, we've done it. He said, you can't do that, it's illegal, you need this certificate, that certificate, you need this to transport a dead body. And as he's listing why you can't do it, Jim says, whoa, shut up. Do you want the job or don't you want the job? Right? And bloke just went, we'll have him. And then he went down with the trolley and had to pull him out the boat. Yeah, to save 150 quid. True. Yeah.
We'll take a break. James
Right.
Whitham, ladies and gentlemen. And he's driving, so that's why he's got a cup of tea in his hand at this particular moment in time. James, let's talk memorable moments.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, I thought we'd have to go there. I mean, memorable moments. There must have been so many through your career, but what ones stand out?
I think, loads. I think, like I mentioned earlier, I think you were, and I think I was probably the last racing generation to be able to be a character. You could, as long as you're. Don't want this to sound like that we didn't take it seriously, because we really didn't take it seriously. But you could have a few beers on Sunday night, and things happened, and memorable. Let me think.
Celebrations wise, I mean, they're obviously, some of the after scene parties.
Yeah, really good. Yeah, we had Indonesia was a weird meeting for me, because I won my one and only World Superbike race, and also there was a party in town after that. So there was already a World Superbike party. The World Superbike organisers had booked out completely just for us the Hard Rock Cafe, which was a bit of a trendy place at the time, and they put food on. And but I'd actually won one of the races at the Central Circuit, so it was sort of really good night for us. And that got a little bit out of hand. But even before we got to the party that night, I was then sponsored by actually a Northampton concern called MotorChinelli, run by
Hoss Elm.
Hoss Elm, who was an Iranian fella who ran a really sharp businessman.
He had a restaurant in Olney down the road here as well.
Yeah. And so he was there, but one of the features of Hoss was he had a false leg. And
it was for smuggling.
Yeah, well, you wouldn't know, would you? So I had a mechanic called Paul Hallett, Pluggy, who went on to be a factory mechanic but he was 17 at the time and just a fetching and carry great lad. And a bloke called Martin Bennett, an X350 racer who I'd known for a long time, another good mechanic, very straight talking, Stoke-on-Trent bloke. Now, they didn't like Hoss that much. He was a hard bloke to work for, actually. He had some funny ideas. But anyway, I didn't have to do that much with him, but they didn't really get on with him that well, it has to be said. So I ended up winning this race, and I'm on the wind down lap thinking, fucking hell, I can't believe it. Just elation. Comes into the winner's enclosure, and there's Pluggy there looking all excited and slapping me on the back, and Martin Bennett, they're all going. And after a couple of minutes of this, I said, where's Hoss? I thought I'd be first here. And Martin said, he's had an heart attack. Oh, right. And then he just carried on talking about the race, and I thought, oh, right, okay. Turns out he hadn't had an heart attack. What had happened, it collapsed on, he's had some kind of, not like a panic attack, like a euphoria attack. He's breathing that hard, he's collapsed, and he's foaming a bit in the pit lane. So he's been taken away by the paramedics as the race had just finished. And in the melee, not only had they lost his leg, but they lost his false teeth. He had a big like a middle plate thing. So by the time we saw him again, he's on like can you imagine an Indonesian health authority, if they have one, I don't know. You can imagine you wouldn't get much of a sort of replacement false leg. It was like one size fits all, and because the one he lost was like a carbon fibre springs and flipping angles everywhere. So that was memorable. And the night was cracking night, brilliant night. They brought food out, big buffet thing, but beautiful food was coming out with these Indonesian sort of servers, and a food fight started. And at no point, when there's probably 150 or 200 paddock residents, riders, mechanics, tyre men, managers, hurling as whatever they can get that isn't going to kill somebody. So any foodstuffs. The place is just a lights on the wall, there's steaks flipping it in your eye. And at no point did anybody in the kitchen think it would be a good idea to stop bringing the food out. Just brilliant. So we had that, and then they got all that cleared up. The police had to come, but they never chucked us out. And then they had a bit of an impromptu karaoke, and Sing Along to the Record, not the karaoke version. Scott Russell did Angel of Harlem, U2, and he was bloody good. He was very, very good. Same meeting as that, it wasn't much a celebration, but on the Monday, so that was a Sunday, on the Monday, a guy ran the Kawasaki in that championship at the time with a good mate of mine called Brian Morrison, Scottish fella. He liked his golf. I never really got into golf, but I liked it. It's a nice walk round if you with a good. I couldn't have played on my own. It wasn't a golf. It was a nice chat and walk with your mates. So me and him were playing golf, very posh course, and we've rented everything and we've borrowed stuff to be able to get on the course. Anyway, me and Brian and the two caddies, and they'd given us a trolley as well. And these caddy blokes, just like helpers, but they were obviously a lot better golfers than us. They're telling you how far it is to the hole, and little Indonesian fellas. And because the water's a bit iffy, I basically had the trots. And I had the trots since I got there. I could manage it reasonably well. It wasn't uncontrollable trots. But on about the 9th hole, we are as far as it is possible to get on this golf course from the clubhouse. And I have got one bubbling up in the departure lounge, right? And I'm not going to make it back. This trolley only did. Brian says, right in the shit. He says, well, just whiz back on the golf cart. I says, whiz? It's like 1 mile an hour. I'll never make it. I'm going in the bunker. So there's a bunker off the side. So the fairway's here, and there's a bunker off the side of the fairway. It's quite a drop as well into the bunker. So I thought if I get against the back end there, I'm going to be unseen from anybody. They won't even see my head, anybody who's playing through. So the first funny thing was, one of these, both caddy lads sussed out what were happening. They knew what we were going to do. They went, oh no sir, please. And he's going, no shitting sand trap, please. I'm going, mate, no choice. So he's just up and then nobody sees it and he don't get sacked. So I flipping does the business. Only thing I think to wipe my bum, took my socks off, right? And you know the little socks that, when you've got shorts on, you wear them socks that don't poke above your shoes much. So I've taken them off and done a bit of a job and I've gone, Brian, what? I need some more wiping stuff. He says, I haven't got anything. I said, well, find something. You know what he threw me? A furry head cover off the driveway. So, like that, put my shoes back on, and then quite proud of myself, felt better, got the rake, back raked it, like that. And off we went and nothing was said. And do you know what? I couldn't help thinking, I just hope somebody's got plugged in the flipping bunker after that and uncovered it all with a big swing. But that was a memorable meeting, yeah.
That was genuinely not the memorable moment I was expecting, I've got to say. Who, during the course of your career, when you worked with them, was a bigger prat than anybody else? Because I'm thinking Macau, when you go back to you talked about Indonesia there, Macau was also one of those holiday races where everyone goes completely crazy. Yeah. And I don't think anybody can really appreciate just how nuts it becomes during that course of that week.
I'm a firm believer in it, and I'm sure lasses are the same as lads, but my experience of daft holidays is obviously with blokes, and I'm certain that, well, I know from my experience with my original wife Andrea that they're just as capable of going crack as fellas. But the Macau was because Macau was a really dangerous circuit, probably the most dangerous circuit in the world, I think, because it's a mass start, there's no runoff at all, the medical facilities aren't brilliant, and it's just, I think, really dangerous. But you ride steady, because for riding at that meeting, the payoff is you get a week in Thailand, or some want to stop in Macau, some want to stop in, but you get a good holiday. And it goes a little bit daft, because it's a holiday race, it goes a bit crackers, and people do a lot of drinking, and they smash up hire cars, and they go gambling, and it was a big holiday, and a bit of an eye-opener to me, actually. When I first did it in '87, I'd only be 20, and it was a little bit of an eye-opener, that, yeah.
Are you sure? 20?
You're 20?
Oh, yeah. I'm not taking the piss. How old are you now?
56. I know.
Wow.
It's all gone, hasn't it? It's all over, son. But I mean, I think again, I was really fortunate to be racing in a time when you were allowed to be a character. You were allowed to be, you know.
But you had team managers that were characters as well back then, didn't you? That was the thing. It wasn't just about the riders and the youngsters that were in the group. Everybody was slightly nuts.
Yeah, and I think we're in a it's when you're racing on when it was a lot more dangerous, and in my time it was safer than your time. And then Mick Grant's, you know, Mick said when he did that original sort of European World Championship circus, the Continental Circus as was, on 250 and 350 yams, early 70s, he said that 4 riders on average would be killed that year during the World Championship, and it was an accepted thing. And I think it's a lot better now, thankfully, but actually we were in the middle of it. You were doing quite a dangerous thing, so you were high-spirited and you let your hair down a little bit, and there was a bit of daftness, and I think that was a good thing. I think, you know, I look back at my racing career and I think I enjoyed every minute, really. Even the bad bits make a good tale now.
Did you ever have that sort of troll through old phone books back in the day?
And see how many in there?
Yeah.
I've got a picture on my phone, and it's at Kirkiston, end of season. They used to pay a few quid for going over. Kirkiston in Ireland, old airfield circuit, and a lot of the British used to go over, a lot of the English used to go over and race with people like Wolsey Coulter and Steve Cole and Mark Farmer and Joey Dunlop and Robert Dunlop and all them kind of people. Alan Irwin, who is Glenn Irwin and Andy Irwin's dad. And there'd be me and Ray Swan and Ian Simpson and all them lads that go over. And there's a guy called Kenny Irons leading it on a Loctite bike. There's Joey Dunlop on a 500 Honda, a Shell Oils 500 Honda in second. I'm third on my own J6R. There's Mark Farmer, Steve Cole, and there was one other. But basically, race one. And of those, Steve Cole's mangled, had a crash at Scarborough, banged his head. Kenny Irons killed himself, or was killed at
Cadwell Park.
You were in it.
He hit me up the back.
Yep. Your YB9 comp?
It was a bimotor that went
on
about
50 metres back on you. Race one killed in a car crash. Joe Dunlop killed in Estonia off a 125. Mark Farmer killed at the Isle of Man. And you look at it and you think, ooh, that's an attrition rate, right in that picture. And it's a black and white picture. And you know, they're always a bit more scary and a bit more atmospheric. I've got it, I had it printed out. Not doom and gloom wise, but just because it won't mean anything to anybody else. But it just, I think, Christ, within a couple of years, man, they're all flipping brown bread.
Was there anybody around you that kind of affected? I mean, obviously, Andrea, you were married to her by then. I mean, how did that go down in your close circle?
At no point ever did anybody ever tell me, neither my mum, my dad, or my wife, or my sisters, ever try and encourage me to stop, ever. They just didn't. However, when I did say I was stopping, a lot of them went, thank fuck for that. You know what I mean? But then, and I believe it now. I've got a daughter, 21, who was a reasonably good, in terms of national standard, horse eventer. And it's a dangerous thing. You will cuddle a tree at some point on that cross-country stuff, off them big horses. And you know, and I went to see her when, there was a period of about 3 years when I didn't go and watch it because me and Andrew weren't getting on, and it was their girl and mum kind of thing when they went off with an horse box and that. And then when me and Andrew got back friends again, I go watch. And she'd gone from being a kid jumping little stuff that you had to pretend to be excited about because it wasn't that impressive. And I went to a national event at Skipton, and I'm walking the course with my then 16-year-old daughter, and looking at these fences going, no. She goes, oh yeah. You're gonna get hurt at some point. And I went and immediately got her an air suit, you know, the flipping big inflated, had just come out. But I'd never tell her she couldn't do it, ever. I just think if you've got a kid who wants to do something and they want it bad enough, the safest way to do it is to help them and make sure they do it as well as they can without cutting corners, and they understand the risks. So, and all my family, I remember, it's a big thing now. Can you imagine your kid coming home at 18 going, Dad, I'm going to do the Manx Grand Prix, right? That's like TT on a budget, so it's even more dangerous because everything falls in bits because you can't spend, you haven't got any money. And I remember coming home and saying, Dad, I'm going to do the Manx Grand Prix. And he went, good on you, lad. All right? That's the only conversation we had. And my mum was just as bad. So I think quite lucky in that respect.
Do you mentor anybody? Youngsters coming through, are you like the big uncle to anybody in particular in racing?
Lee Johnston. And that's not like a mentoring job. Lee knows he's really good. I think I've been telling Lee for 5 years when he started doing the TT and not concentrating on short circuits, and I know how good he is on short circuits. I said, you want to be doing British Supersport, you're too small for a big bike, get a Supersport bike, you will run up the front of British Supersport and it'll make you sharper at road. And I'm not saying he did it just because I asked him to do, but it came to pass and he is a cracking little short circuit rider.
So ideal situation, obviously everybody has to go through Spain nowadays, Italy maybe, but usually through Spain, through CEV or whatever it is.
Yep.
I mean, how would you recommend for youngsters nowadays? There's a lot of them. We've got a lot of talent at the moment in the UK, but none of it is going to make it effectively.
No, I'm glad you said that. None. And you know why? Simple reason. I've sussed this out, mate. It's going to sound simplistic, this. But I've done a bit of touring on motorbikes in Spain and Italy and all over Europe, and I've done some trail riding in Spain, and there's two things that the Spanish in particular, but Italians as well, have got that we haven't got and we're probably never going to have. First thing, every single village has a kart track. Everyone. Little villages have kart tracks. And the other thing they've got that we will never have, they've got really good weather predominantly. And that sounds like weather. Kids come home from school, I've seen it, they come home from school, they get changed, and they go and do 2 or 3 hours on mini bikes, and they are fast, and they get it, and that's where it all starts. Then they've got MotoGP now has got a really efficient system of talent cups straight from mini bikes generally. So mini bikes, talent cup, whatever, Spanish talent cup, European, whatever it is, Moto3, Moto2, MotoGP. Pedro Acosta, 19-year-old, on the roster of MotoGP bike, and that's the exact route he's come through. And for me, that's going to be difficult for us to get him. But by the time a British rider's got to where Jake Dixon, right, loads of talent, that kid, he definitely had the talent to run with them lads. Reason he didn't. By the time he got into Europe and Moto2, he's already 22-year-old or 21-year-old, but he's too old. He's too old. So, and I don't agree. What I don't agree with is, I don't understand the obsession with youth. A few years ago, they were allowing 13-year-old lads, for the most part. I don't think there were any girls in it, but girls were just as welcome, but they're more sense. Right? To ride what is essentially an 140-mile-an-hour motorbike on right track. Right? Wrong. At 13, do you have the mental capacity to make a decision on which your life may well depend? And the answer to that is no. And that's the reason we don't put them in aeroplanes and trucks and other things that'll kill them and other people. But yet we're saying, and I always thought it was a bad idea, what happens? Start killing each other by being aggressive and not understanding the risks. And because they're all together, they're all on the same bike, they can all ride. So as soon as you do fall off, 4 other people run them over. And 3 got killed, didn't they? 1 16-year-old, 2 17-year-olds, I think. And then there was one in that 300 championship in world, the Dutch guy called Jeffrey Baus. No, the other one then. A bit out of touch with World Tour. But anyway, Dutch kid got killed and his mum had an heart attack the same week because he got killed. Tragic, right? They should never have been on bikes at that age. And I've been saying, and then what happens, FMO, right, so what we're going to do, we're going to up the age group. And quite rightly they should.
Yeah, 18.
Sorry, I'm getting out of...
No, 18 it is now. No,
Makes me angry.
Well, I'd like to hear, we all like to hear your opinion, James, I mean, because you're well in position for that. But I mean, 18-year-old now is the limit. It used to be 15, actually, if you were the junior world champion. You could come through into Moto3, 16 normally.
Surely.
So would you be an advocate of moving that even further up the pipe?
Yes, I would. Correct.
UK then.
Yep.
Question is always, are the promoters, are the owners of our sport and the tracks doing enough to promote and to move our youngsters on through? Now, I mean, it seems to me, and I'll answer this to a certain extent, it seems to be a bit half-baked. Stuart Pringle at Silverstone is building a kart track that they don't seem to be interested in having mini motos on or any of the small bikes on, because the kart guys don't want grooves worn out by footrests or whatever it might be that have dug in when they crash. Jonathan Palmer, an old teammate of mine as it happens, is making plenty of money now, and quite deservedly so, because he's done a great job with all the racetracks in the UK. But is Palmer Motorsport, MSVR, doing enough to keep that ladder going in this country? You mentioned that everybody's a little bit aged by the time they leave these shores to go elsewhere, and already they're 2, 3, 4, 5 years out of date.
Yep.
As Jake was when he left Superbike here.
Correct. The answer is no, they're not doing enough, but would it be enough if they did? Probably not. One of the other things we've got in this country that is holding our riders back is the fact that there just isn't the interest. There isn't the interest, no matter how you look at it. There isn't.
Is that because it's self-feeding? If you had a top tennis player, everyone who plays tennis.
Yeah.
If Jake Dixon wins MotoGP, perhaps there'll be a long line. When we were in here the other day with Leon Haslam, and he had all his kids in here as well, there's a lot of interest. There's a lot of parents that are still...
There's a lot of interest. No, there isn't a lot of interest. What there is, there's intense interest from less people. The sort of pool that they're drawing from in Spain and Italy is massive, honestly. I'll tell you who I'm impressed with. The number 7 in Moto2, Barry Baltas. Because he's from a country that has even less interest in motorbike racing than here. And he's flipping good and aggressive as well.
And a big lad too, which seems a little bit too big for what he's doing at this particular point, but it bodes well for when he gets to MotoGP perhaps, and the weight limits all fall into line for him. I mean, what could we do more in Britain you mentioned, Chris's dad up in Northallerton and the like when they were running the North Yorks Road Racing Supporters Club and the like. That's the only place that I can think of that is independent, that's supporting people in racing. I can't think of any others that there are in the country.
I can't. And still, in Ireland it goes off a lot, where a local rider they'll get like they call it a fans club.
And it shows when you look at how many there are. The dynasties of Ireland that have come across.
Now this is the thing. So I don't know how many people live in Northern Ireland, but it ain't that many. It's how many is it? Anybody know?
Not many.
It's not many compared to the sort of, I don't know what we got in England or the rest of Britain. But they are over-represented in reasonable level British Championship racing completely, because there is the interest. It's a big sport there, second only to football, I think.
And it's the biggest show on earth when it comes to the Northwest 200 and the road circuit side of things, although that's all going
a bit now.
It's going to collapse this year because of the insurance. There's only Northwest that perhaps will keep going, but the TT is self-funding because the government get behind that as well. I mean, how are you on the road racing side of things? Do you see that as a dying art? Is that going to be...
Yeah, a little bit. I think the insurance is what's going to kill it. I don't think, for me, the Isle of Man's a bit different because they make a lot of money. Massively high profile. Bit different when you're Northwest, or even worse, you're at Tandragee or you're flipping Cookstown or whatever it is. When you don't make any money and the insurance, they still want 300,000 quid or whatever it is for the insurance premium. So Isle of Man's a little bit different and likely to go on longer. I hope it carries on forever. Will it do? Probably not. I think they have to make some decisions going forward in terms of what bikes they race around there. I think it's not such a massive problem when riders get killed in small numbers. And I know that sounds awful because I'm an ex-rider and every one of them is a problem to lose. However, in terms of insurance, that isn't the problem. It's if if a race going person goes to watch and they get killed, that's the big problem. The riders are more expendable than you'd think, the way it's set up and the way litigation works apparently. So, with Isle of Man, one of the problems we've got is not as many younger riders want to go. Because you go back 15 years and before, all Northern Irish and Southern Irish riders, because they had these plethora of active road circuits and they didn't have that many short circuits, they were more or less preordained to be going road racing on the pure roads. But also they had the Dunlops and really high profile, road racers and TT winners. Now they want to be like Jonathan Rea. You've got the Huewens coming through who they're no interest in, even though Glenn did a TT, he didn't like it, and bless him. it takes a lot of doing to go and learn it, be the fastest newcomer, and then say you don't like it, you're not going back. And I respect him for that.
Wife and 3 children might have something to do with that as well.
Correct.
If you had this moment of madness and decided to get involved in motorcycle racing as a sponsor, as a backer, as a mentor, what would be the route that would be ideal from your perspective? What would you see if you were offering that James Whitham advice to a youngster that was coming through, or the parents of a youngster coming through?
Really simple. And I've been asked a lot, and I always say the same: enjoy it. I know so many riders from my generation who didn't enjoy it until it stopped, and they can't do it anymore. And I think it's a really sad thing that they look. It's weird. I once heard, I'm right into my Second World War stuff, right? My flying, because I like my flying, and I got right into. I was flying along over East Yorkshire and Lincolnshire. And you see these airfields, they're still there. There's hundreds of them. You can see them from the air. Even if they've gone back to sort of agriculture, you can see where everything was. And I got right interested in it, started reading. And I heard about 20 years ago, they all started dying off, these basically bomber command people. And one bloke said, it's a funny thing that my time in the RAF in bomber command, he said, I was only in the RAF for 2 years. And he says, I was less, that's including training. So I was only doing operations for a year. He said it was a tiny part of my 80 years on this earth, but he says it was the defining time. And I think a lot of people with bike racing, Dave Fabian here, right? Good bike racer in his day. But he's done a lot more years not racing, as we all have, before and after racing. Some people only race for 3 or 4 years, but yet they'll sit in a pub and tell you all about it and remember every part about it, and it defined their life. They're always going to be a racer. So for me, I would say to anybody who's getting into racing, do it for the right reasons. If you think you are going to go and be world champ, forget it. Don't do it. Do something else. If you want to do it because you think you're going to enjoy it, and it's a cool thing to do, I'm right behind you, because it absolutely is. But just try and keep a lid. That's not to say don't be determined on your bike, and you know you need a bit of what's the word? You need to aspire, but what you don't want to do it is have it destroy your life if you don't become world champ, because chances are you ain't gonna be. Make any sense, that?
Yeah, I'm like Dave. I've got faster every year.
Yeah. You know, you said weird thing is. There's an adage, and it says you should never meet your heroes because they'll always disappoint, because they're normal people, right? And you've built them up to be something. So if it's a pop star, film star, whatever it is, you should never meet them because it'll be a big disappointment. Well, I happened to work with and work for 3 or 4 of my childhood heroes. One was Mick Grant, that's the first one. Second one, Rob Mack, teammate, and he was then my team manager. Thirdly, Kenny Roberts. Fourthly, a bloke called Christian Saron. Frenchman, soft as a brush, right? Really delicate, little thin-wristed, almost mincing little French fella. But how hard were he on a bike?
The only time I ever came across Christian, he was laying in the middle of the track knocked out.
He always went hard, he always crashed, and he always knocked himself out. But he got back up and he went even faster. He was a fast man, wasn't he?
That was very old school, 500cc back in the 2-stroke days. Everyone will remember them.
Yep.
Motorcycle racing to one side, there came a time when you realised you'd got to stop. I mean, obviously illness had something to do with that at some stage, or did it actually? I haven't actually asked you that.
I mean, you know, you probably know some of this. When I was 26, about that, 25, 26, anyway, I might be 27. In 95, I was diagnosed with what's called Hodgkin's disease, which is a form of lymphoma. And I had chemotherapy, and I got better, and I went back to racing, and probably did better after that than before. But by the turn of the century... Let me
stop you there. Why was that? Was that because you'd relaxed back, the worst in the world had already happened? Was that something, like you were saying a moment ago, you could just enjoy your racing again?
I didn't feel like I had a lot to lose, I'll be honest with you. So, and racing didn't scare me as much as what it naturally had done before. I wasn't scared of getting hurt as much, and I wasn't scared of getting hurt generally, actually. But one of the, I mean, a lot, probably most people in this room will know as much or been in contact with chemotherapy more than me, I don't know, but there's a lot of side effects to various different kinds of chemo. One of the side effects I got was glaucoma, So I got pressure in my eyeballs, and one of them was really bad. So by 01 or 02, I was struggling with my left eye. I'm still racing all right.
And still flying.
Yeah, the flying thing's a weird thing. You can have a license to fly a small aeroplane with one eye, because I know that, because I've only got one eye now. Because in about 3 years ago, my eye was degenerating, and I got an infection in it about 3 years ago, and then basically I took my eye out. So I've got a false, the left eye's false, and I can't get an ACU license now, and I get it. And why would I need one? I'd only do a bit of parading or Goodwood or whatever, so it don't bother me much. If I was 25, it'd bother me. But they still let me keep my flying licence legally. You need 130 degrees out of whatever eye you've got left, and you need to be able to read the flipping third line from the bottom on the thing. That's it. So weird, that, isn't it?
Yes.
Aeroplane, sir. What? No. You have no mechanical depth perception, because your eyes can't measure the angle between what they're focusing on. But what you do have is experience. I know you're a big fella because you sat probably 10 feet away from me, and I know that's where you are. But you're right. You are right in what you're saying.
You've just landed a bit short, I think.
You know what I mean? So depth perception is a thing that you would struggle with naturally, yeah.
So with all this going on in your life, I mean, obviously it's a major thing for a sportsman to suddenly to realise that and to accept that what I must say is a disability at the end of the day, and then you move into broadcasting, where
another thing you need your eyes for.
Yeah, one eye, but you only really need one mouth, which is quite lucky for us.
Yeah.
Moving into broadcasting, I mean, you've made a hell of a career in broadcasting.
Just
how
lucky.
Did it start?
So lucky. My time at Belgrade World Supersport, so 98 through 98, and then 99, but mostly 2000, 2001, 2002. I was in World Supersport, and the commentary team for Eurosport then was a bloke called Jack Bernicle and Neil McKenzie. Neil's an old mate of mine, old teammate from '96. So they went, and sometimes it's done remotely now from Stuart, as you know how it works, but then they flew them out to every single round. So I was having dinner with them on a Saturday night, because Neil's my old mate. I got to know Jack. It doesn't do any harm to keep in with the commentators, because then they say nice things about you. And a couple of times that year, they'd get me in for the second Superbike race that was after I'd finished my Supersport race on the Sunday. And I sat as a third mic, and I got on really well with Neil, and there was a bit of banter going off. And then at the end of that year, I retired, and Neil just had something else going on, didn't want to do the pundit work with Jack. So he recommended Eurosport that they speak to me, and I slipped really seamlessly from riding to working with Jack for Eurosport. So
that's exactly how Jack got the job, because Julian and I were together at that particular time.
Yeah.
And we'd moved from Sky, which was Eurosport was in London, and then Eurosport got shut down in London and went to Paris, and Sky Sports was born in London. And Julian and I couldn't cover a motocross, and Julian knew Jack Bernicle, introduced him to Eurosport, and of course he's been there ever since. Although he was treated badly, I feel, at the end of his career.
I mean,
they dumped him.
Listen, everything comes to an end, right? And especially with the commentary job, you know this, Keith. You're on a little bit of a. It's not like being a plumber, where if you're a good plumber, you're gonna be a good plumber till you want to retire, right? As long as your health stays with you. The commentary job's weird. It's subjective to what people think. So you get a producer in who loves what you do, and then you get another one in who thinks, oh, I don't like that. So it's all subjective. So I know full well that as a commentator and pundit, you're on a limited flipping time thing, really, and it'll end, and everything will, but especially that. And Jack knew exactly that, and we spoke about it, and they wanted a change for a younger fella in his 70s by then. It was the manner in which it was done was shocking. They never told him, they just didn't ring him up, didn't at no point. And we knew that it were going, and we didn't want to say, it wasn't our job to say anything. It wouldn't have done any good if we had. It wasn't like he could do anything, we couldn't do anything about it if we had told him. But we knew we were going, and they never had the arse to ring him up. And that's shocking, isn't it? After 21 years.
it's the people you're dealing with in television at the end of the day, and I think the process is that what benefit is it to them to have informed Jack that he was on his ear roll? At the end of the day, they wanted to get him out of there as clean as they possibly could. I had a similar situation, obviously, with BT, and it's one of those situations that is normal in broadcasting. But the problem is, there's a lot of people in broadcasting who think they are indispensable, and they are the ones that get very disappointed at the end of their career.
Yeah, I mean, hey, listen, I ring him at the end of every year now and I say, look, I know that, you know, you don't have to employ me, but do I need to get another job for next year? That's all I say. No, you'll be with us, that's, you know. So I just get a little bit of a sort of commitment with every year. And if they said, do you know what, we've changed it up and you're not in our plans, you move on, don't you?
Can you see things changing? I mean, Steve Day's just got a bit of a part-time gig at the moment back in MotoGP, which is a good thing, because Steve Day's a good up-and-coming commentator.
Does his homework as well.
He does his homework. He does a lot of work. He was in the run-in when BT took the deal back in 2013 or 2014, whenever it was.
Yep.
And me and Jules got it, but Steve at the time was really keen to get on that gig. But he's had to wait this long. We're talking 8 years before he could get 9 years before he could get a gig at MotoGP, and he's actually a very, very good commentator.
He's a brilliant commentator.
But the trouble is with the broadcast world at the moment, now that TNT own all of it, including BT, the price has dropped. Everybody at the end of this year is back up for contract, like riders will be soon. The same thing goes with broadcasting, doesn't it? And everyone is now scrabbling around on the floor, and all of they're going to be a 50% discount at the end of this year.
You're worth what you're worth, and
but you'll get paid half of that.
Yeah, probably. It's not an easy. You wouldn't recommend somebody get into it. You feel like you're on a knife edge the whole time. You feel like you're sort of one meeting away from not having a job. But where I am at the minute, I'm kind of. I've always thought of myself as being semi-retired since I left school in 1983, to be quite honest. Because everything I've done, I would have almost done for nothing anyway. I've been lucky enough to turn a reasonable living out of it. So I can't really look back and say I'm disappointed, or if it all ended now.
Is that because you're confident in the way that your life is, and that you could always do something to keep yourself and your family? That's got you thinking.
I guess. And I think a lot of this job is about not having to go out and bust your ass to earn a load of money, because you don't need to spend a load of money. You've got to cut your cloth according, I think, and I've got quite a frugal little lifestyle, I think, for the most part.
So, I mean, broadcast world, where do you see it going from this point onwards? Obviously, do you see a situation where they're going to cut back from having commentators and experts on site and doing it like they used to in the old days, where it's back in the studio and the like?
It's all about cost now, and I'm still on the same day rate as I always was. I don't think I was ever on the same. We never talk about it. I never talk to Matt Roberts, James Hayden, Shaky Byrne, or anybody about what they're getting paid. It's not a good thing to do. I think you've got to be happy with what you're doing. I am happy with what I'm doing, and to that extent, I'm still on the same money. But it's getting tighter every year in terms of they won't spend money on. Say, for example, we have these called brainstorming meetings, right? There's always a new phrase to say something that you could say in a more traditional way, right? You know the new one, I hate it. Jump on a Zoom. Jump on a fucking Zoom. What? What is that? You mean just click accept when you send me a video call? Jump on a Zoom. And there's all sorts of, anyway, that's aside, that's just something else that annoys me. So I'm quite happy with what I do and what I get paid for my part. But you'll say, so in these brainstorming meetings, how can we make the coverage better? Well, what we could do is go out and we could go and let's go and film Tommy Bridewell at his place, right, pre-season, a nice little thing, build the characters up. They'll love him, he's quirky, he's nuts. Well, no budget. All right, it's not them. That's where it's gone. They won't spend a lot of money, especially at BSB. I guess it's different if you're at MotoGP, but it's a bigger production but anyway, that's what we're up against all the time with BSB. On a side note, quite a funny one, not a nasty one like I've been bringing out. Tommy Bridewell, right? See what you think to this. Tommy's a quirky kid. He's nuts, really. And he says what he wants, and he's made a little bit of money, and he spent it all on tractors, lawnmowers, farms, buildings, and it's like when you go down to his place. I've been down a couple of times. It's down in Wiltshire. It's a beautiful area, rolling hills, sort of rolling farmland, and he's got some sheep and he's got horses and a cabbage patch. It's lovely. It's like Darling Woods of May, right? So Honda is now working for Honda. And Honda have this weird thing where they are so obsessed with the fitness of their riders and the riders doing the right thing at the right time. They've got them all wearing this thing on their upper arm. And it's basically looks like a watch, and it's connected to the internet, and it reports back to Harvey how much training they've been doing, what they've been doing. It'll tell you where you've been on a GPS, and it'll tell you your calories you've burnt. And I'm thinking, what? What rider needs that? It's in their interest to do well, Harv. You shouldn't have to force them to do it. They should be fit enough, and they are fit enough. They want to do well for themselves. Pressure comes mostly from them. Anyway, we're down at Excel Show a few weeks ago, and I've got Tommy on stage, and I'm chatting with him, and he's good as gold, really funny. Anyway, afterwards, I'm chatting with Harv, and I says, how are you getting on with Tommy? I said, this is a bit different, isn't it? He goes, yeah, but his fitness, unbelievable. He's on that farm, he's up here, he's never stops. Never stops. So afterwards, I says to Tommy, how have you done it? He goes, fastened it onto a sheep. That's what he said. He's fastened the device onto a sheep.
The only thing that disappoints me there that Javier Beltram didn't actually get it, because back in the day, he'd have been looking for that kind of dodge without any doubt.
It's just, I think it's mad. I think it's an invasion of the privacy. What rider wouldn't want to be as fit enough to do his job? I don't get it. Anyway, sorry.
Have you ever wanted to be I mean, everyone asks you this, I'm sure. Have you ever wanted to run a team? Have you ever thought, I'm going to get involved?
No, and the reason is every good team manager I've ever worked with has been the hardest working bloke I've ever known. Honestly, Rob Mack, in his day, never, ever, ever stopped. He just worked so hard. Same as Mick Grant, and it just seems to be a job that you've got to be prepared for it to take over your whole life. And I don't think I was it's not a lazy thing. I just think it's all encompassing.
Chris Herring running a pub. I always feel sorry for him.
Running a pub would be ace if that's what you.
But you've got to be here every day.
You've got to absolutely. Yeah. You know when the mine shut down, right? In the 80s, the mine shut down, and a lot of them got a decent payout, enough to buy a little pub. So a lot of these miners, lots of them around Barnsley, Doncaster area, Sheffield, they went, I've got a few quid paid off. I could set a little business up. What do I like doing? Like going to a pub and getting pissed. I know, we'll buy a pub.
Don't you remember when Roger Marshall did that in Scambles?
Exactly, not they were a miner, but exactly what happened, yeah. Spent
drank
more time on the other side of the bar.
He drank more profit than anybody I knew.
Yeah.
Great guy though, at the end of the day. I mean,
brilliant.
And still embedded in the sport, still 100% in there, him and his wife.
Yeah. His wife works, she was working for McCann's, and he's in the paddock cars.
OMG. He's in OMG now, working with the OMG lot.
And Roger's just the nicest man.
Do you still socialise with the guys from the past? I mean, I see you once in a blue moon. I mean,
I have a pint with Granty occasionally. Granty's in his 80. Granty's 80 this year, 18 June.
I remember parked up at Brands Hatch once in a caravan, as it was back in the day, and all I could hear was this beep 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 beep. And it was Granty at the gate. He'd been off for a bit of extracurricular, like you're talking about, and they'd locked the gate and wouldn't let him back in.
Yeah, Mick was a really good rider in his day, as we all know. Great team manager, very hard man to work with. Really, if it needed saying, he was the man to say it, and I kind of got on really well with that.
Would you say that your personality benefited from the like of Mick Grant?
Yep.
Would he have been a good manager in today's world?
Probably not. Actually, it's a different job, isn't it?
Completely.
I don't think it would.
Ladies and gentlemen, question time. I'm sure there's one or two of you guys that hand up straight away. Go for it.
The question was, what do I think about the ever-increasing speeds? It's a weird thing, the speeds. And I do a lot of these chats, as I do Keith's job. I do a bit of hosting for these. We do John McGuinness. Last week I had a chat night up in Mexborough with Hickey, Dean Harrison, David Todd, etc. And they all say, well, it's got no end. You know, it'll go wherever, it'll get to 140 and then, but for me, there's got to be a point when not that many people can go as fast as that, and if the young ones aren't coming in, or the more experienced ones don't want to do it. I worry when people like, when your David Todds and your Dean Harrisons aren't around anymore. I can't see anybody coming through that's going to do that. Even John McGuinness is still finishing 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, and he shouldn't be, and he says that. He said, because nobody's coming through who can do them 133s, 134s. So, I don't know. It's hell of a speed, isn't it? When you consider best, like 136 mile an hour average, when there's at least 2 corners on the track, Ramsey Hairpin and Governor's Bridge, that are literally 10 mile an hour. I think in certain sections, I think to Ramsey, before Ramsey Hairpin, I think it averages 145, I think. And then the hairpin slows it right down, and because it's the second half of the course that both the really slow corners are in. So you can you imagine that? Can't imagine that.
Keep buying the T-shirt. Keep getting it upgraded.
But my overall feeling about the TT is it'll come to an end. Everything does. However, it shouldn't be down to any government or group of people or lobbyists to stop it. If you're doing a sport or a pastime or a job that only endangers the people doing it, and that's their decision to do it, well, if somebody has the right to say, if a government says, we don't like the Isle of Man, it's very dangerous, which it is, we know that, we're going to stop that. Well, where do you draw the line? Because horse racing, it's an element of danger, rock climbing, parachuting, them dudes with the wingsuits, they all get killed. So once anybody has the right to stop you doing something just because it's dangerous to you and nobody else, well, that's a thin end of what is a huge wedge, and it'll stop everything. So it should still be within the right of the participant to take the risk or not.
And anybody listening to this on OMG MotoGP, you can put it in the comments if you wouldn't mind, and let us know what you think about that. Next, lots of I like that. Yes, sir.
You know when you're doing the commentary?
Yep.
Have you ever had a producer go, no?
Yeah.
We all have.
About 4 times a race.
And
Actually, I'll tell you had most of that. Jack Bernicle, bless him. Do you know, because he's from the generation, he's so eloquent, Jack, but he said things that would be completely acceptable, right, 20 years previously. But even I'm sat there going, whoa, that's got to be edgy. Yeah, we get a little tune up sometimes. We've worked a lot with a guy called Will Brooks, lovely fella, very posh, and he'll just say, "Watch it, James. Be careful where you're going with this." And so you've got you get a tune up occasionally, but actually you know what to steer away from. And some subjects are so sensitive now that you really not to go anywhere near them.
The one thing I've always recognised as the worst thing you can possibly say is when the gallery is completely quiet. Nobody's saying anything, and they're all going, "Did he just fucking say that?"
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what else you've got to remember, that most people get into trouble not because something goes to air. When you're going to air and the racing's going out and you know you're live, you're almost aware of the fact that you've got you're not going to swear, and you're not going to, say anything that's objectionable. But if you're regularly, it happens still. You sat in a booth and there's a mic there and a mic there, and you know you're not on air. The tennis is on and they haven't come back to us yet. But it might not be the public that's listening, but if you've got a mic in front of you, somebody somewhere is listening.
Around the world, it's going on a ring.
Honestly,
every single place.
We've had people in Paris 2 weeks later say, "Oh, well, you were on about so-and-so." Oh.
But then again, you might just be on air, as Jack Bernicle was once, when Tony Carter...
Odgie. He was Odgie with us. We had Odgie. Odgie was still riding in World Superbike. We had him sat with us at Donington. And he's come up and he sat with it. He might have just retired, actually, because it was a World Championship race, so he must have just retired. This is going back 15, 20 years. And the guy who was fronting the show in the studios was a guy called Tony Carter. Good journalist, little gingerhead fella. I got on really well with him. But Jack, for some reason, and him just didn't hit it off. They didn't like each other. And the bikes are pulling up on the grid. And I just says, "You're coming to us late." And Jack says, "Yeah, it'd be that flipping, it'd be Carter in the studio with his arm up one of the guests' arse." Like that.
At this point, we're all fooling around at home.
That went to air. But it got worse, because Odgie was only sat in there, because I thought, well, we can't be on air. Odgie says, "Are you sure?" And it's the first time he'd ever sat in. "Are you sure we're not on air?" And Jack just says, "Well, if we are, I'm fucked." and that's when they went, boom! And pulled him down. But Jack said some belters, some of Jack Bernicalisms. On one of them now, we're at Croft. Croft is a horrendously bumpy circuit. Really, really bumpy. It's BSB, it's stock thou, and there's a 5 or 6 bike battle at the front. It's a cracking race, brilliant. One of the guys right up front is a bloke he's a Somerset lad, lovely lad, called Victor Cox. C-O-X. Cox. You probably know where this is going. He's in a race, but his shock goes off, and it actually has no damping. It happens quite a bit, it's happened to us. And it's the thing just bouncing everywhere. It's just all over, but he's still getting stuck in. He's still at the front. He's flipping things everywhere. And Jack's loving this, and I'm loving it. And it's a really great race, partly because of this. And Jack says, "Oh, do you know what, James? I love to see Cox bouncing around." Didn't even know what he'd said. And I'm laughing. I've turned the mic off. And he's going. So I put, "So you like to see Cox, C-O-C-K-S, bouncing around?" And I held it and went. And then another time, there's a guy, when you could race with one eye, right, there's a guy called Clark. What was his first name? Anyway, 125 rider. Going well, one eye. And Jack loved him, because firstly he had one eye, that's why Jack really liked him, but he was a bit older, and he always went talking to me at paddock, did Jack. And he's had a really good sort of race was Clarky. And Jack said, "Do you know what?" He said, "For a mild-mannered lad," this is on air, "for a mild-mannered lad," he says, when you look into that helmet, he give you a steely stare." That's what he said. I went, "This is on air." I said, "He's only got one eye." He said, "Yes, with the one eye." And we went off track completely. The race were going on, and we're just fucking arguing about Clarky's bad eye. And anyway, we've had some good times, me and Jack. We've been good.
Not allowed in today's world, though, unfortunately. No. Next one, there was a gentleman over here.
Yeah, you saying about imports getting faster.
Yep.
And being too fast for the likes of Campbell and Knockhill.
Yep.
Do you think that's why MSP are looking at places like Navarra? And is it true they're looking at Anglesey to add to the calendar as well?
Right, two different things. Are they looking at different circuits? MSV, yes, they are. I don't know whether they're doing it for that. I mean, they've bought Navarra, and they're going to develop the place. Nevada's. People think because it's in Spain, it's had a world championship round there a couple of years, 21, I think, just
a while ago. Yeah, a while ago.
That it's some kind of, Jerez or, flipping Aragon. It actually isn't. It's right in the hills. It's about 1,000 feet above sea level. It's all second gear. It's a really tight and twisty little circuit. Not that much going for it, other than the fact it is likely to be a bit better weather in 3 weeks when I'm there than, say, Campbell would be. But I don't think that's the sort of saving of it. I know that a lot of the teams are a little bit upset in the fact that they all need a carnet now after Brexit. So it's plus the fact they've got a test weekend the weekend before. So most teams have got to keep the staff out there, fed and watered and housed, notwithstanding the fact it's going to cost a few quid to get them all out there for perhaps 10 days, 11 days, something like that. So it's quite an expense. The Anglesey thing, I do a lot of track days at Anglesey. It's the unseen gem of British circuits. It's absolutely fantastic circuit to ride. There's one part of the circuit which is you go around the seaside bit, big fast corner, up, little first gear left, going into a second gear right, coming right back on itself. So if you overshot the first one, you'd be going straight across the second one, which is unacceptable. So that corner would have to be shifted. Other than that, and the small road in would be a ball ache, but the garages, the infrastructure, size of the paddock, the view, the flipping surface, brilliant. So it could have a BSB race there.
MSV are expanding all over the place. I think that Jonathan Palmer's plan was always to go abroad as well. I always thought the Snetterton was a track that was, because they've got the railway line that runs nearby, they've got the main road now that's dual carriageway all the way to Snetterton. I can see him expanding on Snetterton.
Snetterton's amazing, and they've got land around it. It's not expensive land if you wanted to. Like, can you imagine Brands Hatch trying to not even expand the circuit at Brands? They've got problems trying to make a bit more runoff because they don't own any of the land around it. And guess what? It's flipping expensive land down there.
Well, he's bought half the houses that back onto it, hasn't he?
He's tried to buy as many as he can so he can alter it, but it's a big ask. Can you imagine how much easier it is in Snetterton when it's all potato and carrot fields?
Anyone else? There we go. 2.
You know Carl Fogarty quite well, and he's
Yes.
not doing a lot this minute. Do you think he could make a good commentator?
No. Next question.
Only if he was talking about himself.
This is Carl, right? Carl, to be honest, if you go for a night out with Carl and he's relaxed, he's a funny lad. He's a nice lad, funny, he's a good mate. However, they got him on, and he'd be a hell of a flipping pundit in terms of TV if he could do the job really well, because he's Carl Fogarty and he's flipping as many times world champ as he is, and they'd love to have him. And they tried him a couple of times at Eurosport, and this was at Croft, he came to Croft, and he stood there, and it was Carter, it was Tony Carter, me, and Foggy. And Tony says, right, after the break, we're going to come back and do a little bit of analysis of that Stock 6 race that's just gone on. See you after the break. Went to break. Carl turns to me and says, don't know anybody in it, I don't know anything about it, don't drop me in it. So he hadn't done any research whatsoever. And plus the fact he's never, if somebody said, oh, what a fantastic lap record we saw broken there, he's more likely to say, I went faster than that in 1972. Or something like that. But I don't think punditing would be well, he doesn't need the money, does he? So.
And you won't get him for free.
You're not getting Carl for free, and quite rightly.
Next, sir.
Hi, Keith, one for you. Just wondering how you got your job at Sky, which you were years ago, but I knew Martin Turner. I just wondering how you got the interview, was it the package? Right?
It was how did I get the job at Sky? Do you know, I've often thought that. It was one of them things. I came to the end of a career and I was working now and again with Chris Carter. We talked about him earlier on. For Anglia Television back in the day, when Anglia had all these individual, Central Television, Anglia Television, all the ITV regions had sports departments back then, and money to spend on individual things in their particular region. Like Anglia, you had banger racing, speedway, and all the stuff that came from the east of England used to be in Anglia Television. I was in that region. Steve Ryder started his career there, believe it or not, from more famously for F1, and he used to interview us back in the day. And so it was just a kind of natural progression. In between races, Chris Carter would say, pop up and see us in the commentary position. And you had to take him cake, because he was a fat bastard.
Yeah, well, and he couldn't move so quick.
And he could, once he was in position, that was it.
There.
He didn't move. He was like Jabba the Hutt.
Yeah.
He just kind of spread out over a couple of chairs. Bless him. And so that's how it started for me in commentary with that. And then, of course, you talk about Martin Turner. The first time I met Martin Turner was when Eurosport was owned by Murdoch in London, and it was run out of a tiny little office. And Martin Turner was making a series called Tracks, which was sport to music, which was absolutely off the scale when it came to satellite television. Everybody laughed at me when I went to satellite television, because at the time there was about 3 people and my mum that were actually watching it or listening to it. No one could get a dish, no one could get wired, none of those things at all. And Murdoch kept pushing, shot his own satellite up in the sky, and Martin Turner got promoted. Martin, by the way, is the only BAFTA winner in Sky Sports originally. He's now retired, he's got Parkies, catches up with everybody at some stage or another, but a great guy, really, really visionary producer. And for some reason he saw something in me that I hadn't seen and no one else had, and that's how it all started for me. I came into television.
You and Jules were benchmark.
Well, Jules, fuck, I love that man. Jules is one of my favourite people. I still speak to him every single week. I love someone that is completely politically, personally, and every other way financially different from what you are, but you can always come to a reasonable argument. Why the hell governments can't manage it, I don't know, because me and Jules can. And you'd have an argument with him and it would be absolutely flat out, but you would always come to a reasonable conclusion at the end of the day. And he's just one of them men that he's intelligent, he's got integrity, which is something you can't say about a lot of people in television, I've got to say. And he's happy doing what he's doing, and he still is now, selling his tin toys or whatever he does occasionally for fun and games. And Jules is just an exceptional man that I think, again, he's wasted, because there's this guy sat up in bloody wherever he's outside Manchester, and and he could be used for so many things, and he's still fit and raring to go. Anybody else? Go on, throw us some abuse if you can't do anything else.
Best female rider we've got at the moment.
Oh, there you
Best
go.
what?
Best female rider.
Jenny Timmuth.
The female rider thing is
Been and gone.
no.
Yeah, but she's lovely.
So the way I look at it is, in this country we've got quite a few female riders coming through. We've got a couple of them that are reasonably talented and have got, but I still think Jenny, for a couple of reasons. She's old now, she's in her 40s in terms of bike racing. I still see Jenny quite a lot, she instructs for me a little bit. I love Jenny, she's lovely, lovely girl, and I love the idea that she started racing not because she would get any kudos for being a woman in a man's sport. She wanted to race bikes because she wanted to race bikes, and she'll never pull any stunts on, you know, using a gender to get any more spots. She just wants to race a bike, but she still can ride a big bike, and I've not seen yet a woman in the world, including Anna Carrasco, who is the first woman world champion. I've not seen any of them ride a big bike as well as Jenny, and she's brave woman. I'm telling you, she's flipping.
British talent coming through like that.
There is, and there will be. I think they've got to be a little bit careful, because, and I don't want this to sound sexist, but somebody like Maria Castello has done a cracking job. For me, not as good a rider ever as what Jenny was, but she's really worked a ticket in terms of, you know, getting sponsorship and getting herself well known for it. And, you know, she's finished fairly well up in races at the Isle of Man, so that has to be respected. But at the minute, I can't see one that is going to win British Championship yet. But what I would say is I disagree entirely with having a separate Women's World Championship, right?
And so does Jenny.
And Jenny does. And the reason is this. The problem is, if you've got a sport where the physical attributes of a man is going to give him an unfair advantage against a woman, well, you've got to have separate sports, and that's fair for women and for men. Which is why I disagree with somebody who gets up one morning and thinks, I feel like a woman. I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to be a woman's boxer, even though I'm a 6-foot man. That's wrong to me. Whatever. Be what you want, but don't try and screw it over for everybody else, right? So, but the other reason why motorcycle racing, for me, is there an inherent advantage that a man's got that a woman doesn't. We've seen MotoGP riders. Danny Pedrosa is 48 kilos at his height, right? Tiny bloke, 48 kilos, not very strong, therefore. So there isn't any physical reason that a woman cannot compete on a level playing field with men. And so that is a sport that really would be a bad thing to say, oh, do you know what? The reason they're not competing is because it's not been a women's sport, right? And if you give it another 50 years and get a lot of women into it, they're going to be as good. Why not? There's no physical reason they can't be. But to then say, well, we'll have a world championship for women, that's saying they can't compete. That's like the opposite of being equality. You know what I mean? Because it's a sport where you don't need the physical kind of attributes. It's a weird one. And Jenny doesn't agree with it. Jenny loved racing with blokes because she wanted to go and race a motorbike. And so, but I can't see anybody at the minute who's going to be British Championship material, in my opinion.
At the end of the day, they need backing. FHO, Fei-Ho is putting a little bit of money in there, and she's got enough to try and work that through. But what James says, seconded.
And there's a girl called Scarlett Robinson, and she's in the 300 class. One of Fei-Ho's girls, lovely kid, and she came on my dad brought her on my track days. We gave her free because she was just getting into British Championship. She said, "Come when you want, bring your 300." She had 300 Kawasaki, and just said, come and ride down, get as many laps in as you want, don't have to pay. And she's a really nice kid. And really quite quick, decent club level rider. And then next thing, she's in Fairhorse team, she's got 7 sets of brand new levers, she's got this, she's been paid for that, and it absolutely destroyed her, because with that came pressure. And she hated going racing a motorbike where she loved racing a motorbike before. So it's not always a good thing to, you know, to get a sort of big deal. And it finished her. She didn't want to go racing anymore. So
I'm not being rude by looking up on my phone, by the way, ladies and gentlemen. I was just looking up Kayla Yakov, who, if you, I don't know whether you follow OMG MotoGP podcast, but we did a thing with Ben Spies the other day, and the Rahal Racing team is now looking after Kayla. Yeah. And she's 16 years old, and he says she's faster than him. He says, you know, and when someone like Ben Spies bigs up somebody, you know it's about right, because he don't do that.
And it will come, if women want to get into it, there's no reason they can't be, so why wouldn't they be?
Next question, anybody? Because, sorry.
What's your opinion on the old electric bikes?
Oh.
I don't know.
Electric bikes. Well, my opinion on electric everything is a bit odd. I mean, right.
Vibrators.
Oh, I've got to be careful what I say, because this is going out of a podcast. This will pop up somewhere, so I don't want to stab myself in the flipping foot of you.
Yeah, I don't think you've done that tonight so far.
But my opinion on the whole electric thing is this, and a lot of the London people have, they've all bought Teslas, right? The TV compound at BSB is full of Teslas.
Now that's tossers.
Well, the fact is this, if you do your research, and what I didn't want to do was get into an argument over dinner with somebody and not know my shit. So I learned. If you buy a Tesla because the government are giving you incentives financially to get one, or because you want to improve the air locally in a big town, or because you just want a Tesla, I have no argument with you. Go get your Tesla. But if you think for 1 second blindly that buying a Tesla, buying a £70,000 car that's full of batteries that have to be dug out of the floor in wherever it is, and we're passing it on, we don't want to do it because it's illegal to do it here, so we just pass on the problem somewhere else. So if you're trying to save the planet by buying a Tesla, you are damaging, you're doing twice as much or more damage to the planet by having a Tesla. And the reason is this, because there's a damage to the planet effect to build the car, right? So to build a petrol or diesel car uses X amount of rubber, metal, smelting, boiling, electricity to build things, to melt things, to cast things, to turn things, right? A typical electric car is about twice. It costs the planet, it costs the environment about twice to build an electric car as what it does to build a diesel or petrol car. Now that might not always be the case, but it is at the minute. When you start running them, it starts paying that debt back because it's not using as much of the planet's resources to keep running. Now if you live in a country like Norway where 80% of the energy is renewable, mainly water, right, hydroelectric, or Sweden or Canada, other countries, well it starts paying it back pretty quick. So within 100,000 miles, it's paid its debt back, and the line of the petrol and diesel car still using bits of the planet, and the electric car isn't. But if you live in a country, most of the world, that are still 70 to 80% fossil fuel, making the electric to put in your Tesla, it takes between 300,000 and 400,000 miles to pay its own debt to build it back to the planet, right? And are you going to keep that car for 400,000 miles? And will it go wrong in the 400,000 miles? No, because what you're going to do, you're going to, in 3 years, get another Tesla because you're on a lease. So what you're doing is actually destroying more of the planet, making another one. That's not even to get into the argument that when the 7-year battery warranty runs out, nobody wants them, so they're going to end up having to get rid of them, and it's difficult to get rid of. So the all electric thing's a bit odd for me. But if you think you're saving the planet by buying an electric car, you ain't.
Tell us that again.
Yeah, what do you think about electric vehicles again?
Just, it's a fact. That's a, you all right, explain to me that I'm lying. That's fact. So,
It's a question about electric bikes.
Yeah, sorry. Sorry, I got on a run there. Piss me off, I'm going to flipping be angry all the way home now. Electric bikes, the big problem with electric bikes is this. And
With the racing, like what Ducati are doing, to try another.
yeah, the massive problem with bikes is, and racing isn't such a big deal here, it's weight and range. There's a really big balance to be done, even more than on a car, because obviously a car, these things weigh 2.5, 3 tons because they're full of batteries and they weigh a lot. Motorbikes, electric bikes, it's a real balance. You can't have a 500 kilo bike and have it doing anything. So it's always so in racing, if they're limited, when you've got to do a specific job for a specific time at a specific speed, that's going to be a lot more doable in actual fact than a bike that'll do 400 or 300 mile range on the road. So
it's why we've only got 7-lap Moto E races. I mean, I think the only reason why Dorna took on the Moto E situation was so that we didn't end up in the same position as the F1 ended up with a separate electric series run by some other promoter. So Dorna kept it all under one wing to just cover off any challenge that there may be from another promotion
himself at
of some kind should electric ever become that popular, which hopefully it bloody won't as far as I'm concerned.
But anyway, do you know the car to run if you want to save the planet? One you've already got. Run it until it stops working, because that's already been made. Right, that's me done.
Anybody else dare to ask a question? Oh, he does. There's 2. Carry on at the back there, sir.
Just thinking about MotoGP.
Careful.
It's the Ducati show, isn't it? So what's happened to the Japs?
Oh.
Yeah, I tell you what, I said to Chris before I came in, when we were just in the bar, I never thought I'd see the day in my life when a factory Honda GP rider, the gold standard in the past that was, would pay himself out of his contract to ride a second-hand Ducati. Never did I think I'd see that. Unbelievable. I don't know what's happened. I think the Japanese were always into making road bikes that they were selling a hell of a lot of, and now they're not selling any of them. Who buys sports bikes? Nobody. Best-selling bikes are odd things like, naked things and retro things and adventure bikes. So I think the old jobs change a little bit really, and it's you don't want to see people struggling. I don't want to see the Japanese struggling.
Well, it's the land of the rising sun, and if you keep on, we're going to bloody see the rising sun fairly
Yeah,
soon.
it's true. True.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think we've got to make a break there. It's 10 o'clock and some people have got to go home. This man's got to go home as well. It's been great having James Whitham here on the OMG MotoGP podcast, as well as the Stirrup Cup. Hey. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you very much, James.
Thank you. Thank you.
We'll be at the bar.